I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we please start with a roll call, Jason?
Council President Perez.
Here.
Councilmember Van.
Here.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Here.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Here.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Here.
Councilmember Pritz.
Here.
Councilmember Corman.
Here.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all present.
Okay, thank you. First up is a proclamation.
Proclamation, Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health is a part of overall health and 1 in 5 adults experiences a mental health problem in any given year, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by age 24, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause among young adults, and 90% of people who died by suicide had shown symptoms of a mental health condition, according to interviews with family, friends, and medical professionals. And whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when individuals get help. And whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery. And whereas it is important to maintain mental health and learn the symptoms of mental illness in order to get help when it is needed. And whereas every person and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help. And whereas public education and civic activities can encourage mental health and help improve the lives of individuals and families affected by mental illness. Now therefore, I, Armando Pavoni, Mayor of the City of Renton, do hereby proclaim December 2020 to be Mental Health Awareness Month in the City of Renton. And I encourage all members of the community to fight the stigma of and provide support for mental illness. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Renton to be affixed the 7th day of December 2020, signed Armando Pavoni, Mayor of the City of Renton.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Van.
I move the proclamation to be adopted as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Van, seconded by Councilmember Prince, that the adoption be, or that the proclamation be adopted as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, tonight we have joining us Pastor Casey Hahn. Hello, Pastor.
Hello, hi. I just briefly want to, Mayor, City Council Ruth Perez, City Council members, just thank you for your public proclamation deeming December Mental Health Awareness Month. I am so grateful. As a member of the Renton community, I have been collecting stories of people who are struggling not only with issues surrounding the pandemic, but also with grief and depression and other mental health issues. In June 2020, the Washington State Department of Health published a behavioral health guide for health workers, teachers, law enforcement service providers, businesses, and families. And in this comprehensive publication, it highlighted that even before COVID-19, there were over 600,000 people, Washingtonians, receiving treatment for mental health needs, but there were 700,000 people who were in need of services and did not have them. Now, with the pandemic, those numbers are skyrocketing. Many in our community are struggling with online school, isolation, job loss, and possible eviction. And mental health issues are on the rise with the holidays, the pandemic, the short days and long nights. Advocating for mental health is essential for us in the community. I just stepped off the line of the free grocery store here with Sustainable Renton, and you can see the grief as well as some of the issues that our neighbors are experiencing as well. And so thank you not only for this proclamation, but I hope that this is a step forward for us as a city to continue to advocate for mental health for all of our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor and Pastor Casey Hahn. And, this proclamation means a lot to our community as I've been hearing their stories and that, initially, even before COVID, mental health illnesses has been a part of our community for a long time coming. And with the COVID-19 pandemic really showed a lot, starting with seniors and now more of the youth and young adults. That's pretty much going to plague our community even after COVID, even if we have the vaccine. So this recognition, very much applaud the mayor and the city council member, and thank you so much for your work in this. And thank you, Pastor Casey Hahn.
Thank you, Councilmember Van. Okay, next up, we have a public hearing, and I believe Paul Hines will be speaking.
It might be me, Mr. Mayor, Brittany Gilia.
Brittany, sorry about that. I guess
No.
Brittany can do this. Okay. Brittany.
All right, let me just share my screen. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to the City Council. For the record, my name is Brittany Gilia, and I'm a planner with CED. For those who may be accessing this presentation by audio only, my email address is bgilia, so that's bgilia, @rentonwa.gov, and my phone number is 425-430-7246. I'm here this evening to present proposed amendments and extensions to current interim zoning controls related to economic recovery. The existing interim zoning controls were adopted in July of 2020 through Emergency Ordinance 5974. The ordinance established two economic recovery measures: an economic recovery right-of-way use permit, which I will reintroduce to you later in this presentation, as well as economic recovery signs. Ordinance 5974 will sunset on December 31st, 2020, and economic recovery revocable right-of-way permits will be in effect until December 31st, 2020, or until the city enters phase 4 of the governor's Safe Start plan, whichever occurs first. Staff is proposing to extend these interim zoning controls for 6 months, which is the longest extension period allowed through an emergency ordinance. With this extension, staff is proposing that economic recovery right-of-way use permits are extended until June 7th, 2021, or until the city enters phase 4 of the governor's Safe Start plan. Any economic recovery right-of-way use permits issued as part of Ordinance 5974 that are valid as of the adoption of this ordinance are proposed to be extended to coincide with the new expiration period. There are several amendments that staff is proposing to the language of the interim zoning controls currently in place that I'll go over briefly in this slide and then expand on through this presentation. Firstly, a statement is proposed that parklets that are prefabricated and engineered, as well as parklets without structural components, are within the scope of economic recovery revocable right-of-way use permits. Later in this presentation, I'll have a few images to explain what this may look like. Along with this, the required temporary use permit for businesses that wish to expand their operations into an adjacent tenant space are proposed to be waived. A limited number of short-term parking stalls are proposed to be established for curbside pickup within the CD zone, and the city center parking garage fees are proposed to be waived for periods up to 10 hours. This ordinance states the ongoing presence of COVID-19 and how it is still incredibly relevant that we provide assistance towards economic recovery to all affected businesses. It also encourages parklets and prefabricated outdoor spaces as an approach to furthering economic recovery, and states that increasing the availability of short-term public parking stalls within the CD zone may assist the struggling downtown business community. Currently, if a business would like to expand their operations to accommodate customers in compliance with the governor's Safe Start plan, they may do so through an economic recovery revocable right-of-way use permit. These permits allow businesses to expand into the public right-of-way, as depicted in this image here in green, as well as into their own private parking lot. These permits are needed for parklets, tents, and sidewalk cafes, and have several guidelines, a few of which are that the space must be kept clean and maintain a 4 foot of clear pedestrian access, and all of the elements of the space must be temporary. The economic recovery permit has become an expedited, simplified process where I've been working directly with businesses to make sure that the application process is as simple as possible. And so in addition to expansions in the right-of-way, staff is proposing an amendment to simplify the process of expanding into a vacant adjacent tenant space in order to meet occupancy requirements as part of the Governor's Safe Start Plan. So you can see here in the image that would expand the possible locations that one could propose to have business. All applicable building permits would still be required for the tenant improvement or the remodel that would be needed to connect the two spaces internally. And staff is proposing to waive the planning requirement of a temporary use permit that would otherwise be needed. This would help businesses that are eligible to increase their floor area to allow for an increased occupancy appropriate to the current Safe Start phase. And here on this slide, I've got 4 images that are examples to illustrate what a business expansion may look like. Up top, we have a prefabricated parklet that will reside in the right-of-way, and it does not include any structural or potentially load-bearing coverings. And below this, you can see images of a rendering done by Michael Chen that shows what a pre-engineered and prefabricated parklet could look like with a covering and some heating elements. These types of pre-engineered parklets would not need a building permit. However, an economic recovery revocable right-of-way use permit would still need to be obtained. And we've got some examples of application. So we've got 3 images on the screen. On the left-hand side, on the top, we've got a picture of the Whistle Stop Ale House, who used their private parking lot to put a tent up to increase their dining area. Below that, you can see Kujini Florist has used their private parking lot to put up a pop-up tent for a pumpkin patch. And to the right, you can see a sidewalk cafe. And if you'll notice, the boundaries of this cafe are marked by these outdoor expansion, outdoor boundary markers. And we do have these markers available at City Hall. So for businesses that wish to expand their operations outdoors, but do not wish to have a physical barrier, they can use these markers for that. And lastly, staff is proposing to address parking in the downtown civic core. With the recent changes in the Governor's Safe Start Plan, many businesses have shifted to curbside pickup. Along with the changes in business models that people are trying to work through, there's also some simultaneous construction projects that are happening along Wells, Williams, South 3rd, and South 2nd. And because of all of these changes, downtown communities have expressed a need for more public parking spaces. So part of staff's proposed amendments, you can see here a draft of a curbside pickup sign. Staff is proposing to establish a limited number of short-term parking stalls within the CD zone. This would help the turnover rate for parking increase and would assist businesses with their pickup and curbside pickup needs. And to balance out the amount of available parking for long-term uses, staff is proposing to waive parking fees in the city center parking garage for up to 10 hours. And the parking garage is located on South 2nd and Logan Avenue South. And I've got an image here of the entryway for anyone watching that might recognize the building here. And so along with that, the next step for this is tonight to accept public testimony regarding the proposed interim zoning controls, with first and second reading to be effective immediately upon adoption. And June 7th, 2021 is when the ordinance will sunset, and all economic recovery business expansions and signage must be removed unless they are permitted through other city means. And for businesses that are interested in contacting us for advice on how they can expand their business or how they can utilize anything in this presentation, feel free to contact me. Again, my email address is bgillia@rentonwa.gov. And I can also be reached via the Business Assistance Hotline at 206-503-1742, where I'd be happy to help any businesses with their expansion needs. And finally, I have a slide here that shows some parklets and outdoor expansion areas from other cities. And I wanted to introduce this to you all to show you what CED is hoping to move forward towards in our downtown core. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brittany. Great job. Okay, do we have any correspondence? Jason?
No correspondence, Mr. Mayor. And I'd also, if I may, I'd like to point out that this, for anybody who wishes to speak, this comment period is only for this particular public hearing. There will be an opportunity to speak later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Mr. John Glenn to speak, please.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council President Perez, and members of the council. My name is John Glenn, and I'm here tonight to represent the business owners, residents of the downtown core, as through my position on the Renton Downtown Partnership Board of Directors. We strongly and full-throatedly give our support to the updated amendments to the Emergency Economic Recovery Ordinance, and would hope that the council would expedite and put these new measures in place. I'd like to thank you for your support to the downtown community throughout the last few months, specifically as many of our business owners in the downtown core have gone through immense amounts of work and labor, and we see this amendment and update as an opportunity to give back to them and to continue to help support them as they move through a really tough economic time in downtown. Thank you very much, and I would also like to add a personal invitation to our Shout Out to Santa event, which is going to be occurring here in downtown Renton on December 12th, 19th, and 20th from 12 to 4 p.m. In the parking lot of Cugini Flores. You might have seen that tent just a minute ago. Santa will be there. We may not be doing Santa House in downtown this year, but families can drive by, and we would invite the whole council to join us for that event as well. Thank you so much for your continued support of the business owners and the residents, as well as the Renton Downtown Partnership itself.
There are no others signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you. What's the wish of the council? Do we have any communication or concerns of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Park.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Second. Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember O'Halloran that the public hearing be closed. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, we have administrative report.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I have two items. The Renton Airport Advisory Committee accepts applications on an ongoing basis for all membership positions. The committee currently has vacancies for positions representing the following neighborhoods: Benson Hill, primary position; Benson Hill, alternate position; West Hill, alternate position; South Renton, alternate position; Highlands, alternate position. For questions, please call 425-430-7394 or email rentonairport@rentonwa.gov. Additionally, cold weather is on the way. Snow is not far behind. During snow events, it is imperative that motorists do not park or abandon their vehicles within any portion of the traffic lanes. Abandoned vehicles impair snow and ice removal, impact response of emergency vehicles, and may be towed. Please remember that during snow and ice events, the department's sanders and snowplows are dispatched to keep major arterials drivable. Visit rentonwa.gov/snow routes to view our de-icing and snow route maps. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before we open public comment tonight, I want to acknowledge the outpouring of public comments we received with regard to the proposed interim zoning for homeless services. I appreciate all of the constructive input on this issue and look forward to ongoing partnerships to address the challenges surrounding our collective goal of supporting the county's homeless population. The input has helped us analyze what impacts this may have on underserved and marginalized groups. We started by proposing legislation that was based on regulations borrowed from other cities in our region. but we are listening to the Renton community's suggestions for change. The version of the ordinance that we expect to read tonight incorporates many of those changes, and we plan to recommend additional changes that incorporate council and public feedback we continue to receive. Requested changes that are not implemented prior to the council's anticipated adoption of the ordinance on December 14th may still be incorporated into permanent zoning and/or future amendments to the interim zoning. As noted in some of the comments we received, the success of the programs that serve the most valuable populations depend upon support from the community, including neighborhoods that are impacted by newly established uses. Carefully planned and implemented zoning that considers neighborhood compatibility, public health, and safety is a critical aspect towards making these programs successful. This ordinance is being recommended as an emergency interim zoning to establish initial regulations at the starting point, while more permanent regulations can be further developed. For those of you who are concerned adoption of the ordinance will have a negative impact on the homeless, please understand that the ordinance would, for the first time, expressly allow long-term overnight shelters to operate within the city of Renton. Our zoning laws do not currently address such uses within the city, and we are in litigation with the Red Lion shelter operators because the existing zoning laws prohibit the operation at the Red Lion property due to its commercial arterial zoning designation. The administration is asking the council to take action that would make such shelters uses lawful so that the city can redirect our time from enforcing the existing code and litigating with the Red Lion shelter operators, and instead spend the time developing long-term regulations that accommodate homeless services uses in a way that can lay the groundwork for their long-term success. And next up, we have audience comment.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Council President Perez.
to give an opportunity to all the people who wish to speak, I move that public comments be 3 minutes for this meeting.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Council President Prince and seconded by Councilmember Corman that the audience comment period set for tonight will be 3 minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, and I apologize for this. We moved a little fast, but earlier for the proclamation, it might be it's out of order. My apology. But I didn't see Mr. Justin Jensen earlier with Pastor Casey Hahn. I was hoping that he could be expressing his thank you to the council and the city for the proclamation.
Yeah, we can certainly add him to audience comment coming up here just shortly.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next, I will open up the the remote audience comment period. It remains the strong intent of the city to have public comment regularly included on our agendas. I believe the opportunity for the community to communicate with their elected officials is essential. The ability for the community and the council to successfully communicate during these public meetings rests with me. I recognize the importance of hearing from the public we serve and take this responsibility seriously. In this recent venue of virtual meetings, we will continue to evaluate and receive feedback on the success and shortcomings of our public comment period in an effort to improve the process for the public and the council. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. You will be called upon by a city staff member. The staff member will call the speaker's name and unmute the appropriate microphone, which will send an automatic prompt to the speaker of, "You have been unmuted." This is the speaker's cue that it's their turn to speak. Please begin your comments by stating your name, city of residence, and the topic you are addressing. Speakers should be able to see a timer on the screen. When your time is close to expiring, please work on finishing your comments. Okay.
Okay, first up, we have Nancy Connolly.
Hello, I'm sorry to I didn't realize I would be first. My name is Nancy Connolly. I'm a physician at the Red Lion Hotel. I worked at the shelter. I'm addressing the ordinance that would have potentially, and I acknowledge that I am not a lawyer and I don't understand completely the ordinance. Nevertheless, I'd like to speak in favor of the shelter. But first, I'd like to thank very much the council for hearing my testimony this evening. Second, I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my personal gratitude to Onkar Dhaliwal, the owner of the Red Lion, who not only with his courage, which really impressed me, in taking the action he did in a time of crisis to help his neighbors in need, but also for showing me, bolstering my hope and inspiring myself that there are people out there who want to do as he did and help his community. And so he's an inspiration, and I wanted to say a personal thank you to him. I am so very tired, as I'm sure so many of us all are, by the COVID and all that 2020 has brought. And Arkar's generosity is a ray of comfort in these dark times. Now, many have spoken before and will speak again about the transformational nature of what the Red Lion has allowed in Renton, and we're so grateful. I want to tell one very quick experience I had with a woman in her 60s who was never at the Red Lion, but I met her at the prior shelter. And she told me she was a woman, as I said, in her 60s who'd worked every day of her life. She never missed a day. She worked even in the shelter. She told me the hardest job she'd ever had was simply living in that large congregate shelter. And what the Red Lion offered is a break from that for people in need. So that's the only patient story I'll tell you. But the Red Lion makes that work of living a thing of the past. It is indeed the minority of clients at the Red Lion who cause problems. And I have empathy and compassion for the city of Renton. I understand it's hard to host this shelter. I understand that. The vast majority of clients are simply grateful safety and security afforded to them. I hope you'll consider what great good the Red Lion is serving, the shelter is doing for the people there, and reconsider the zoning ordinance that would make the people move. I hope that firsthand knowledge of the community moves you to advocate with me. And I'm so grateful to be giving this testimony in this month of mental health illness, because I really think the city of Renton, the city of Seattle, King County, we all need to advocate for better services, better coordinated services for those suffering from mental health. And then I'll finish. Thank you so much for hearing me again.
Next, we'll have Russell Berg.
My thanks to the Renton City Council for this opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Russell Berg, and I'm a primary care physician also working at the Renton Red Lion. I want to thank the city, the people, the emergency services, the police, and the fire departments of Renton, as well as the leadership of Renton, for all that you are doing for those living homeless in King County. As a physician, I have the privilege of getting to know the Renton Red Lions residents on a daily and personal basis. I do not need to tell you that each has suffered hardship, discrimination, and trauma, but thanks to the Renton Red Lion, our residents are no longer defined by these challenges. I knew many of the Red Lion residents when they lived at the DESC shelter in downtown Seattle. Something clearly changed when these individuals finally had access to a private, safe, and quiet space to call their own. The label of homeless began to lift away, and in our medical office, we began to talk about everything else important to them besides just figuring out where to sleep. I began to know my patients, the residents of Red Lion and residents of Renton, for what they are, people. And I hope you'll hear later in the audience, in the comment section from residents of the Red Lion tonight. Mechanics, laborers, and caregivers who go to work every day make their home at the Renton Red Lion. Our residents are mothers and grandmothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. There are elderly with dementia whose families cannot care for them. There are disabled veterans, disabled nurses, and paramedics, and so many others with stories of how fragile being housed really is and how easy it is to lose. Tragically, how hard it is to regain. What I didn't realize until going through medical training is that organizations like the DESC and the shelters they run are the safety net for all residents of King County at risk of homelessness, including residents of Renton. In response to COVID, these organizations quickly and successfully changed how they provide services to prevent the spread of infection within their shelters, but also in the greater community. If there is a silver lining to COVID, and that's saying a lot, it made plain finally that the health of all of us depends on the health of all of us. To the Renton City Council, for the health of all of us, I urge you to not pass the proposed zoning ordinance regarding the Red Lion shelter.
Next, we have Michael Wildman.
Yes, this is Michael Wildman.
You are signed up to speak during this period.
Hello. Yes, I'd like to talk about the homeless shelter.
Please feel free to begin.
I'm a homeowner here in Renton for the last 12 years. And I have seen the homeless turn a nice street into a nightmare street. I'm talking about people using the bathroom on my street, throwing trash everywhere, crazy people. And this is before Red Lion. So this will be like a 200% in what I'm already suffering. It's just crazy. I don't think you can let this go. Renton's crazy enough as it is. And I just think it's going to be more craziness. I have empathy for these people. I understand they need shelter, but I think that location is not a good location. It's right next to all of our neighborhoods. It needs to be in a more industrial setting, somewhere where everyone is not living, that are paying for their homes, that are paying taxes, that are paying and paying. And I just want to feel safe in my home. So I just want to say that I'm very against this Red Lion idea, and I've been waiting all night. And I just want to say that I'm really against this. I love Renton, but I just think it's going to make Renton a worse place, not a better place. Zach?
Oh, I'm Zach. I'm Michael's son. I've been living here just as long, my whole life, and from my experience, there's been lots of like many strange people coming through here and everything. And like you said, I totally understand the situation. I understand where they're coming from, but personally, it just doesn't. It's not that I don't feel unsafe. It's just kind of worrying and all that. We've had people that are living very close to us for forever, and I don't think that this situation is going to change with the new homes for them, personally. But I mean, yeah, I'm just against the idea.
Okay, well, that's all we have to say.
Next, we have April Berry.
Okay, well, we talked to him.
Is there camera?
No, just voice.
Did you leave?
No. No, they're on to him.
I'm afraid, April Berry, we cannot hear you, so we'll move on to Gabriella.
Hello.
Oh, hello. There you are.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, please mute your phone, and we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you to Renton City Council for the opportunity to speak, and the people of Renton for supporting the DESC Red Lion Hotel. My name is April Berry, and my address is 1 South Grady Way, also known as the Red Lion Hotel. I wanted to share a little bit of my experience here as a resident, or actually what I've been through to get me to this point in my life. And it begins with my father. He was a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he became an abusive alcoholic until he committed suicide when I was 15 years of age. That being said, my mom, she kind of distanced herself from me and my sister, and we had to deal with those emotions and everything that went along with it on our own. I turned to drugs, and the drugs I found gave me the confidence to be able to hide all these things that were inside of me. It was like a blanket or a Band-Aid. But with the drugs, it didn't take long for everything to kind of be taken away. I battled to stay clean off and on and my whole life, and then I managed to string 3 years and 4 months together. And I was certain that I wouldn't touch any of those substances ever again to deal with my problems. And I believed that I was cured, but quickly realized just how true that was. So even if you fight every day, sometimes life and its cruelties, they can consume you. So on December 2nd of 2019, I signed over my parental rights to my 2 youngest sons. My children had tested positive for drugs, and unbeknownst to me, I was their dealer. In my attempts to medicate my own unresolved issues and traumas, I was recreating the whole traumatic cycle for my own boys. Signing that order, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was giving them a fighting chance, more than I was ever given. I know that I can't be there for them right now, but I love them enough to let them go. A month later, my husband and father of the boys died. He left me alone again, and to struggle with the thoughts of ending it all. I realized I could not leave that legacy to my children the way my father met me. So I started to search for answers, wanting to find out truly for what was so wrong, why was I feeling so broken. And I came across this thing, it's not a thing, I guess it's adverse childhood experiences, or what's
Excuse
called.
me, Miss Berry. Excuse me, Miss Berry, your time has expired and there are many others behind you.
Oh.
We'll have to move along. I'm so sorry.
Can I just say thank you to the DSS Red Lion Inn for their amazing staff, and that I have been here, and this place has been my refuge for the past 3 months, and I've gotten more clean time since I've been here in the past 2 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Gabriella Duncan.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
My name is Gabriella Duncan, and I am in a documentary that has traveled the world that was actually born in Renton. I struggled with homelessness, lost my home about 10 years ago. I wandered through to Seattle. I am and have my degree is in social work, and my documentary was done by Faith and Family Homelessness Project, Seattle University, and New Life Church in Renton, with John Harrison as the videographer. I still work on the streets and do a lot of outreach, and I am really impressed with some of the places that have taken hotels, and not only here, but I travel back and forth between Albuquerque and watch a hotel there that they also are helping people who struggle with homelessness and addiction. My homelessness was partly related to an illness and some medical care I needed. I'm watching these people go into the places where they have personal space and they begin to thrive. Is some of them even clean up? I was given a place here in my own home. I have a roof, although I'm struggling to pay for that roof because only a portion of it is paid for, but I do outreach out of that roof, out of where I'm at now. And I do want to thank Onkar Dhaliwal for stepping up to this huge problem and for making some sort of attempt and making a blueprint, because we have become so stuck that those who don't have enough are just making those who do have enough really struggle on their own with helping the vulnerable. When people have an individual space and a room to be in, it changes the whole perspective of everything that's going on with them. And I wanted to say that if we took care of the least of these, that's where we're going to get the utopia and the perfect world that everybody seems to crave, that they can pay for and we cannot. As my work as a treatment foster parent and also watching many of my children be on the streets and in shelter with their own children because of the ancestral and generational thing, as April pointed out, that struggle just continues to create and snowball. And so I would just ask, most of all, that this be really thought through and that there be an answer in the end. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Daniel Malone. Daniel Malone, it is your turn to speak. Daniel Malone, it is your turn to speak. Okay, we will circle back. Next on our list is Melody Kroger. Melody Kroger, it's your turn to speak.
Thank you. My name is Melody Kroger. I am a Renton resident. I used to work for Catholic Community Services and Solanas Casey with the homeless individuals in downtown Seattle. I also attended Seattle U and worked with the Faith and Family Homelessness Project when I was in seminary there. I wanted to point out that a public records request showed that the individuals, the hotel owners, are paid $370,000 a month. A quick review to be in this partnership with DESH. A quick review of TripAdvisor, Expedia, and Hotel Planner showed that there are 224 guest rooms at the Red Lion Inn. Rates were listed from $53 a night to $62 a night. That is the going market rate for this hotel. If we do a little bit of quick math, this partnership of $370,000 a month yields $61 a night for 200 homeless individuals. This means that the hotel owners have all of the benefits of a full hotel without the room cleaning services, hotel staffing, pool maintenance costs. It is revenue without incurring the expenses of operating a fully functional hotel. So I want to suggest to my fellow citizens living in Renton and also the city council and our mayor that this partnership with the hotel owners might be about less than helping our neighbors in need and more about generating a significant profit margin for the hotel owners. It's also a large measure of disrespect for our communities of faith here in Renton who do all of this work without such largesse from the taxpayers. I urge Renton City Council and the mayor to move forward with this zoning change. Thank you. And please mute my mic.
Oh, sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulty. The next person on the list is Marvin Rossetti. Marvin Rossetti. You may speak, Marvin Rossetti.
Hi, thank you. First of all, Mr. Mayor and to the members of the council, thank you. Again, my name is Marvin Rossetti. I'm a Renton resident. I've also served as a human service professional, small business owner, and now currently a professional academic. And I've worked and shop in the area where the Red Line facility is on Grady Way. And I'm in support of the city's interim zoning control. I also want to express my gratitude to the DESC staff and the owners of the Red Line for all of their caring and giving. And I'm also proud to live in a city that's compassionate and generous. But we are also understanding and thoughtful and reasonable. And the county's decision to make the COVID shelter was reasonable at the time in April 2020, but that's not the situation now. And however, due to the length of the emergency, our community is not prepared to assist in all of the underlying problems that are currently at the Red Lion. Where I support the city's ability to intervene, I also, and it's with regret that I also support the city's ability to limit the amount of people that are being helped specifically at that facility. And I know it seems we're taking resources away from people who are in dire straits. However, it was actually a good indicator of the city's limits, a stress test, if you will. And to the credit of the city and the nonprofit communities that are assisting in this huge effort, it's visually apparent that the city of Renton has exceeded its limitations in order to adequately help these new guests and hopefully our new residents or community. And our capabilities were just inadequate to the task, and it showed that the city cannot take this task on alone. And we know that homelessness and mental illness and all the other issues surrounding of why people are there at the Red Lion is a regional issue. However, along with the ordinance, I would ask that the council, and of course with the mayor, they ask King County to help us in what essentially is a Seattle scale problem that's been placed right in front of our city. And the city of Renton is not Seattle property, and they're expecting us to deal with this as if we were a Seattle neighborhood. We are not. We are a city of Renton. So we need those resources from the city. If they're going to put us in this position, we need the help in order to help these very vulnerable residents. And this is where, first of all, I like to thank the city for its leadership in trying to help the people who are here. But we need to ask the council for more assistance, and so we can help all of these people who are in our city adequately. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Diane Dobson.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Greetings, Mr. Mayor and Renton City Council. Diane Dobson, resident of Renton. The Greater Renton Chamber of Commerce provided a platform for a community conversation on Saturday, December 5th. This was a positive and uplifting conversation with registered participants between business owners, representative, residents, former employees at the shelter, resource providers, faith leaders, and King County representative as well. The goals of the gathering were to discuss the ordinance and the widespread information, the complexity of issues, to provide a comfortable space for every attendee to share their perspective, and to plant a visionary seed on how the city and county might collaborate. When the facilitators reported the highlights from each of the 5 breakout groups, themes common to all emerged. The establishment of a de-intensification facility in Renton without input and approval from the city has placed the city at a disadvantage. Nonetheless, the city is working to be responsive to needs. The city of Renton is being impacted and should be regarded by the county, so the 2 entities may work in partnership to develop a delivery model that addresses city and county needs while maintaining safety for ongoing commerce and community life. Facilities imposed upon Renton need to be considerate of the impact on the local community and address the needs in the host community, as well as those who are brought into the community. Businesses are concerned for the safety of their employees and customers. Business owners and service providers do share a concern for Renton's homeless, and they are sensitive to the needs of the people who are presently living at the Red Lion Hotel. There's a general sentiment is the population at the Renton Red Lion is too large to be served effectively. A continuum of care needs to be developed with input from service providers. It is important for informed voices to be at the table, those who are experienced service providers as well as the beneficiaries, so the solutions are not imposed, but rather are based on real needs. The City of Renton's draft ordinance reflects an understanding that service provider voices need to be heard when planning to deliver services. The needs of the homeless with combination of mental illness and chemical dependency differ markedly from the needs of the families or youth who become homeless. And it's to be noted we have over 600 students in the Renton School District alone impacted in some fashion with homelessness. Mental health services are critical to the rehabilitation of people who have suffered the trauma of homelessness. Open, ongoing communication is crucial to building the trust needed to forge a partnership and develop durable solutions to long-standing problems. Accountability measures must be in place to ensure all carry out the agreed-upon measures. Plans for removal or transition of the people at the Red Lion Hotel need to be accurately shared so as not to create anxiety. A task force needs to be established to help inform the city's long-range planning. We look forward to the collaboration with the City of Renton and the greater Renton community as we seek solutions to the ongoing challenges, and thank you for your continued leadership, and we have the greatest respect for the position you are in. Thank you for listening to the many voices and perspectives from the community.
Next, we'll hear from Representative Nicole Macri.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Nicole Macri, and today I'm testifying in my capacity as the Deputy Director of DESC, the operator of the Red Lion Shelter. I'm commenting on the proposed ordinance, and I want to thank the Mayor and Council for your leadership and for your public service and for hearing my testimony tonight. The proposed legislation was introduced quickly last month, shortly before your meeting before Thanksgiving. Daniel Malone, the Executive Director of DESC, said then that a better approach would be to work with service providers and the new Regional Homelessness Authority to collaboratively establish reasonable regulations. Following the meeting, DESC was invited to offer suggested changes to the ordinance. While we appreciated the offer and took the city up on it, I want to be clear that this is not a viable alternative for the suggestions Daniel made for dialogue and engagement with other key stakeholders. A process that includes an actual dialogue and the kind of process where ideas and information are shared could yield a much better outcome. Nonetheless, we spent considerable time creating suggestions, a couple of which appear to be accepted in the draft that you have in front of you tonight. Most of our suggestions, however, were not included in the latest draft. The second draft is in fact even more harmful and discriminatory than the original one. The new version includes additions that were not in the first one that emphasize that people in the shelter population are dangerous. That way of thinking is what has often been behind laws that criminalize homelessness. We appreciate your proclamation earlier this evening for Mental Health Awareness Month, recognizing that stigma discourages people from getting the help they need. To be effective, we must look at the support people need. The memo said that the intent is to allow new shelters to exist, citing that it is modeled after the Bellevue Code. However, I do not believe the Bellevue Code has resulted in a single new shelter coming into use. This legislation does not identify what the needs are in and around Renton. It does not engage with partners to come up with ways to address those needs. It isn't proactive about dealing with the crisis of homelessness or the critical need for affordable housing, shelter, or services. I know that you care about people and you want to do the right thing. This legislation fails to achieve those aims. I ask you to vote no on the revised proposed ordinance. Please work on an approach that both addresses the clear need within this community and addresses your legitimate need for more robust approaches within Renton and across the entire region. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify this evening.
Thank you. Next, I'm looking for Jeremy or Max Heller. If you're in the room, can you please raise your hand? If you are on the phone, you may raise your hand by pressing *9. Jeremy or Max Heller? Okay, we'll move on to Carolyn Draper. It's your turn to speak.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Carolyn Draper. I've been a Renton resident for about 4 years, going on 5, and I live less than 3 miles from the Renton Red Lion. I would like to speak against the current version of ordinance number 5996, Emergency Ordinance Interim Zoning Controls Homeless Shelters, which I understand is up for a first reading today. I see that we began this meeting with a proclamation concerning Mental Health Awareness Month, in which the mayor encourages community members to, quote, fight the stigma of and provide support for mental illness. As someone who has seen a friend go through mental illness related to homelessness, I can attest to the importance of stable housing as a first step to address the mental health concerns of our homeless neighbors. Ordinance number 5996 is in direct opposition to the mayor's admonition, as it puts an end date to stable housing for homeless individuals who may experience mental health issues and makes it harder for homeless services to exist in the city in the future. The memorandum dated December 3rd, 2020 claims that this ordinance was necessary due to, quote, King County's unilateral relocation of the DESC shelter, and that this ordinance is actually helping with homelessness by, quote, adopting interim regulations as opposed to a moratorium while further legislation is being developed. These claims hide the facts that this ordinance creates an arbitrary end date for the current emergency shelter operated by DESC and makes any future homeless services in the city virtually impossible with its severe requirements. The memorandum seems to applaud this ordinance for creating an opportunity while it really is escalating the issue. We are in a pandemic. We don't know how long it will last. We can't put a timeline on when the current residents of the Red Lion can safely relocate. The effect of this ordinance would be to put an end date to DESC's use of the Red Lion and create regulations to prevent something like this from ever happening again, seemingly as a way to get back at King County for daring to do this and disturb the city of Renton. This ordinance could have been written to explicitly permit the emergency shelter at the Red Lion during the pandemic and allocate funding to serve the needs of the residents there, including mental health services, so that it would not fall on the shoulders of our police department. Instead, we have an ordinance based off the City of Bellevue's homeless services regulation that put the comfort of housed residents and business owner over the needs of a vulnerable population during a pandemic. As a Renton resident, I am ashamed and saddened by the probable effects of this ordinance as it is currently written, and I strongly urge the council to make major changes under the direction of homeless service providers and public health officials before putting it into effect. There should be no arbitrary cutoff date for the use of the Red Lion as an emergency shelter, and there should be no harsh regulations making it more difficult to operate homelessness services within the city. Thank you.
Next to speak is Winter Cashman.
Good evening, Council. My name is Winter Cashman, Renton resident. I wanted to comment on the emergency ordinance over the Red Lion. I was part of the Count Us In program who saw and counted directly the homelessness within our city, and we know, as was commented earlier, about the 600 some impacted families with students. I have held a semi-weekly roundtable with dozens of Renton residents who started contacting the city since it first proposed a timetable to remove them in May, and we have been looking for the city to be a regional player and a leader against homelessness. We are building our foundations of equity and inclusion on sand if we are one day valuing them and the next day not able to understand the links between poverty, crime, and mental health. Redline residents have been here and they have not, and the majority of them have not done much to harm our city or harm us, and have made significant improvements, as has been noted by many earlier today. I hope that tonight the council will look into their hearts, and if they feel as I do that this ordinance is rooted in prejudice against on-house communities or in unnecessary and perhaps bad prioritization, that they will find the courage to reject this ordinance, or at minimum give us time to get real community input instead of rushing this painful and divisive ordinance through the holidays. Finally, I wanted to comment on the interim CAO and police chief and any other administrative positions being ascertained. Without any judgment toward the characters of the people perhaps being considered for appointment, I hope this administration fulfills its promises in declaring Black Lives Matter to ensure that diverse candidates are seriously considered and the merits of candidates aren't limited to local experience, but for the backgrounds and perceptions they would bring in ways that reflect the true diversity of our residents. It would be nice to see a city administration reflective of its community. Recently, Tukwila mayor attempted to appoint internally the same way and was met with resistance by community and the council for not considering diverse candidates. It would send the wrong message for Renton to not have a process that is equitable instead of insular. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Justin Jensen. It is your turn to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Justin Jensen, we'll go with you first.
All right, well, I just wanted to thank the mayor and city council for the quick response to the proclamation with regarding mental health and trying to destigmatize, begin the steps towards destigmatization of mental health. I think that it's a huge issue, and it, directly affects a lot of what everybody is speaking about tonight as far as homelessness is concerned, and a lot of younger children could use a lot of this, a lot of these resources that might not be available to them otherwise, and I just think that it's really great that there's something being done about the mental health there. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Joshua Janet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So my name is Joshua Janet. I am a homeowner in the city of Renton. I am also a housing and community developer at a nonprofit. So I've worked on permanent supportive housing projects as well as shelters, including the Kirkland Place for Families and Women that opened up this year. I'm here to talk about the emergency ordinance for the Red Lion Hotel. And I'd like to say that I am opposed to it. What you often find with people that say that this is a Seattle problem or it's a King County problem, addressing homelessness is not. This is in fact a Renton issue. It's not related to, we can't blame it on others. I also think that you will often hear people saying that they are supportive of the idea of it, but they believe it should be located somewhere else. And there never usually is a somewhere else. In fact, the Red Lion Hotel is located next to a highway interchange. I don't know where else you would want to go from here. And so I think it's really important to understand that while, we can understand the challenges to emergency management and the challenges of having a large number of people with challenges in one location, if you limit the number of people arbitrarily, they're not going to go away. They're just going to be unsheltered. They're going to be still trying to find places to sleep outside Renton businesses. They're going to try to find places to sleep in Renton parks, and they're going to try to find places to sleep within cars located in residential neighborhoods in Renton. So arbitrarily limiting the number of guests at a shelter is not a solution. If the city of Renton has other ideas for where to relocate individuals and to be able to provide operators for facilities and to provide funding for operations of those facilities, perhaps that's another conversation, but that doesn't seem to be part of this ordinance. So that is where I would like to, that's just what I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Gabrielle Weidling. Your turn to speak.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Weidling. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a homeowner here in Renton, and I live within a couple miles of the Red Lion Hotel. Like Mr. Janet said just before me, the hotel is, right next to the highway. So when we're hearing this stuff, like where else would it go? Like there isn't really anywhere else for it to go. I used to work near the Red Lion. My parents have stayed there when they visited me here. And I used to frequent the businesses around the Red Lion. When I heard some months ago that we were going to get a shelter at the Red Lion, I was honestly pretty stoked. It made me really happy to hear that we were going to step up and help people during this pandemic. I was also hopeful that this attitude would be something that everyone in the city of Renton could carry forward post-pandemic, whenever that might be, because that's definitely not going to be for a while. I was a little nervous when I saw a police statement posted on Twitter and Nextdoor that used the exact languages, "We had no alternative but to accept the move to Renton, and we will need to do to lessen the impact and keep everyone safe." That attitude has been reflected in not in my backyard attitude of some of the residents and commenters here tonight about not feeling safe. I am a 30-year-old woman, and I am not worried about my safety in regards to the shelter. It's heartbreaking to me that in the month that we started this meeting off with a mental health awareness declaration, that we're talking about doing something that will further hurt and marginalize unsheltered people in our community by adopting this ordinance. I'm grateful that we have the shelter in place right now. I'd like to see us doing more in the city of Renton, finding more permanent way to help people. I think the shelter is a really good start, and I think putting a timeline on closing it is a terrible idea. Please do not pass this ordinance. I'd also like to extend a thank you to Drs. Berg and Connolly for their work at the shelter and what they said earlier, and also for the courageous testimony of a shelter resident earlier. And again, just to be super clear, please don't pass this ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I see Jeremy and Max Heller. It's your turn to speak. Jeremy and Max Heller, you'll need to unmute and then you may speak. Okay, let's go with Dave next. Dave, it's your turn to speak and we'll come back to the Hellers.
Okay, my name is Dave McCammon. I've written to you previously on this subject. I just want to say, plus with what was said earlier, that anything that is done, the size of the group needs to be looked at, because that's where most of our expenditures have gone. I mean, in our last false alarm there, we brought in a ladder and an engine from Tukwila, because ours was available elsewhere, being used elsewhere at the time. So we're not only using up our resources, we're using up others. So we are affecting what goes on in the region, and we need to protect the residents. I'm sorry, I am a resident of Renton. My name is Dave McCammon. I think I said that. That's all I had to say is we need to look at even a smaller size than what you're talking about. Less than 100. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Nancy. If you could please provide your full name and your city of residence. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Quinn, and I am a citizen of Renton for 13 years. And I'd just like to express my support for the ordinance. I'd really like to, I couldn't articulate it better than Diane Dobson and Marvin, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Rossetti. We didn't ask for this. And while I'm a former foster parent, and you know, I have compassion for this, but I just want to thank the city for their foresight on this, and thank you for standing up to standing up for our city and for those of us who believe in this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dave Tilton.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. I just heard about this meeting and read some of the comments on Nextdoor. And for the record, my name is David Tilton. I live downtown. I actually live on Williams Avenue South, just a few blocks from City Hall and Grady. And, you know, I didn't prepare a statement, so this is just kind of off the cuff. But, you know, I'd say a few things. You know, first, I resent a lot of the attitude that people that don't want this don't have compassion or don't want to be part of the solution or have no feelings for people that are homeless. I've been homeless. I've dealt with issues, overcome them. But to mirror the comments of the woman that was just on, we didn't ask for this, and we didn't ask for the problems that Seattle has created, and with bad policy and you know, the way they've addressed homelessness has created that problem and continues to propagate it, and there's a reason why they call it Freeattle. And we just don't need these kind of problems here in Renton as well. We can't afford them. We're not set up to deal with them. And I would say that, you know, I'm probably going to run out of time here because I'm a little bit nervous and rambling a bit, but you know, I live downtown. It's not a distant issue for me. You know, I don't see anybody from the shelter coming to my house and picking up the needles that are here. I don't see them ushering the people that are walking up and down our sidewalks, rambling and being erratic, coming to usher people back over to the shelter. None of that's happening. We're the ones that are living downtown, trying to make a community for ourselves and our family. I have 3 small children, I have a wife. We own property right downtown here. No one's coming around to take care of those issues. It's just creating more misery for those of us that are down here. And I would say if we're going to have a shelter, fine. Then make that for the people that are there due to circumstance, because they lost their job, because they're in a domestic abuse situation, because they have a bad landlord. But we don't need the violent ones. We don't need the ones that are addicted to drugs or have extreme mental health problems, because by definition, they just don't have the rational thought to make good choices, and they should be dealt with and helped to get through those issues. But it's just not. It's not something that our community. It's not a problem our community created, and it shouldn't be thrust upon our community because Seattle has failed to deal with the problem. And I'm not saying that anybody that is in that out there trying to help homeless in the social services arena doesn't have good intentions. I think they have wonderful intentions, but they're getting horrible results. And something has to change in the way that homelessness is dealt with in mental health and drug addiction. It shouldn't. If you agree that someone that's on drugs and has a mental health problem can't think rationally, why are they allowing them to choose to live on our streets, break our laws, defecate on the streets, while the rest of us have to follow the law? And I'm out of time. Again, I appreciate the chance to speak, and thank you for the city council and the mayor for standing up for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marcy Palmer.
Thank you. Next, we have Marcy Palmer.
Ms. Palmer, it's your turn to speak.
Hi, yes, thank you for this opportunity. I am calling to say that I am in support of council voting for the ordinance as proposed tonight. And I thank you for all the work that has been put in since the original ordinance was put out. I know that the administration and staff have worked hard to get all input and redo the ordinance. Since this has come out, I have heard from so many Renton residents concerned, and all of them have compassion for the homeless. We're all just concerned about the high density of 230 some high needs people suddenly in our downtown. I want to commend council and mayor and administration for their graceful work since this has happened. And again, short and sweet, please lead and represent your Renton residents. Vote for the ordinance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jeremy and Max Heller, one more try.
This is Max Heller. And my husband, Jeremy Heller, is here with me. I am against the continued use of the Red Lion as a homeless shelter. I worked there briefly as a security guard, and the things I saw at night during my shift, quite frankly, angered me quite a bit. First, let me say, my husband and I were homeless briefly when we first got married, when I was taking care of my dad. And after my father died, because of the financial hardship, Jeremy and I became homeless. And we worked very hard to get ourselves out of that situation. I have a lot of compassion towards the homeless plight, which is affecting the Seattle and King County and now Renton area. But this situation at the Red Lion just really rattles me. I have seen continued violence, crime, drug use. I live about a quarter of a mile off of Grady and within walking distance of the hotel. And so many homeless, I've had my own vehicles broken into when I go to the shopping at the downtown Safeway. There is continued homeless constantly in front of the store, panhandling, fighting, begging. This situation is getting ridiculous, and for this shelter to be thrust upon the city of Renton, I am completely against it. It is not a good situation. This is not the right answer, and an alternative needs to be found. The continued use of the Red Lion is not it. My husband, Jeremy, wants to make a brief comment. Thank you for your time.
We need to have licensed mental health professionals that are going to be in place. Also, we need to make sure that if if we're gonna do this, COVID-19 protocols are gonna be in place at all times. This is not happening whatsoever. It's getting ridiculous, and that we need to be protected more, and that the death and the violence needs to stop in our homes. I just can't afford to be scared at night and have to use a gun by my side of my bed. And I yield.
Thank you. If there are any others who wish to speak, please raise your hand at this time. If you're calling on the telephone, you can use your microphone by pressing *9. We have another speaker, James Alberson. Please go ahead.
Yes, this is James Alberson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, James Alberson, 24-year resident of Renton. I'll make it short and sweet. The situation at the Red Lion, when it came about, when it all went down, it was, some might argue everything wasn't necessarily, I hesitate for the lack of a better phrase, totally above board. And from what I know, I mean, it was a little questionable, and at best, it was a temporary solution and very reactionary. The thought that it's being argued to kind of move into a permanent solution is disturbing. I'm totally for the council voting for the ordinance, and I'll put it simply like this. People are saying, well, there's a notion of not in my backyard, making emotional arguments. It's not about not in my backyard, but not in my backyard if my backyard is not properly prepared for. And Renton is not prepared for continuation of status quo. And as others have mentioned, there are other solutions that need to be explored. And therefore, I am definitely in favor of voting for the proposed ordinance. Like I said, short and sweet, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. If anyone else has not already addressed the council, please raise your hand and we will get you called upon. If you are using a telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand. And again, any of those who have not already addressed council are welcome to raise their hand at this time. I'm going to call upon Don Person. Don Person, you may speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is Don Person, and I live in Renton. In the 53 years I've lived in Renton, Renton has always been a leader in helping the homeless and providing low-income housing, zoning, and working hand in hand with the Renton Housing Authority and other agencies to provide quality, affordable housing. The proposed interim zoning before you this evening will give city staff 6 months to work with the Homeless Coalition, concerned Renton citizens, and homeless advocates to create a path for permanent zoning to allow homeless shelters in Renton. I know you are aware current zoning does not allow homeless shelters in Renton. It also gives the City Council another chance to review the proposed legislation. The city has used this path many times before to achieve a compromise that works for the entire community. An example of this is the Center of Hope, which is based in the former Renton City Jail. First opposed, but by working through a process, it became a reality and a success. This interim zoning is just the first step to provide an equitable zoning code to allow homeless shelters in Renton and can become a model for all cities to follow. I encourage you to vote yes for the interim zoning. And after listening to a lot of the other comments, I just have to say from a personal basis, for those of you who know, we have worked hard to make Renton a very livable place for everybody. Right now, we need this ordinance to make the interim ordinance go into effect, and then make a good ordinance and find a place where we can put the shelter. Thank you very much.
All right, we have someone called Zoom user. It is your turn to speak. Please identify your first and last name and city of residence before you speak. Thank you.
I don't know how I got back on here, but my name is April Berry, and I am a resident at the Red Lion Inn, and I guess I have a couple more minutes.
Oh, Miss
Berry, I spoke earlier, and I was kind of nervous, and I didn't get to, yes.
I'm so sorry.
Can I just say this, that I live here at this hotel, and that I have been here for 3 months, and COVID has been rough on all of us, and it's been a really hard year for me. But without this place, I would not have been able to.
Miss Berry, I'm so sorry, but since you have had your 3 minutes, I'm sorry, I'll have to end your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I see Dr. Linda Smith, your hand is raised. Please feel free to speak. Dr. Smith, you'll have to unmute. There you go.
Sorry. Again, Dr. Linda Smith here, Renton resident, to the mayor and to the city council president and council members. Thank you for just allowing us to have a voice in this conversation. Thank you for looking at the comments and making revision. And I know this is a very difficult situation, and my concern is for everyone. But I am concerned about those who are homeless in our community. I know with COVID, it's a detriment to put people out. And I know that this ordinance is extended through June. And none of us know what June will look like, but I believe our council, our mayor and our council are compassionate enough to be open to preventing or instituting ways to keep people in housing. I believe it's incumbent upon King County to make sure that they're looking for adequate housing and shelter for people with adequate resources and mental health services available so that people can move forward. But I am concerned about our unhoused residents here in the city of Renton, that they're being left behind in all of this. And so I just want to say that it's a very difficult situation, but there is a human side to it, that we are dealing with people. And I think in all of our decision making that we're making, let us be mindful that these are human beings. These are mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles that we're dealing with. And I just want to say that. So thank you.
All right, if there are any others who have not had a chance to speak who wish to do so, please raise your hand now. If you're on the telephone, you can press *9. If there are any others who have not yet had a chance to speak, please raise your hand. I see no more, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up is consent agenda. We have 9 items for council consideration.
Mr. Muyor?
Yes, Council President Perez.
I move that the council concur with the consent agenda as published.
I second. Okay, it's been moved by Council President Perez, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the council concur with the consent agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Next up is unfinished business. Council President Perez.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Van.
And no unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Benedetti.
I have no unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
I have no unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McGurven.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Transportation Committee has a committee report.
Okay. Transportation and Aviation Committee report, accept 1300 Bronson Way North Street vacation petition, number VAC-20-001. The Transportation Aviation Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to accept the 1300 Bronson Way North Street vacation appraisal and to set compensation at $0. The committee further recommends that the related ordinance be presented for first reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
I move that the council concur with the Transportation Aviation Committee report.
I second. Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the council concur with the Transportation Committee report. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Councilmember Prince.
Well, of course, the Finance Committee has some business.
Okay, I have two reports for the Finance Committee. The first is regarding Davie Resource Group Incorporated. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the 2021 contract with Davie Resource Group Incorporated in the amount of $134,400 for consulting certified arborist inspector services to assist with the Community Services Department Urban Forestry Program tree service requests.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Prince.
I move that council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Prince, seconded by Councilmember Van, that the council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And the final finance report is regarding the city's liability insurance for 2021. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to renew the city's liability insurance coverage with Alliant Insurance Services at a rate increase of 22.3% for an annual premium cost of $542,239.43 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the implementing documents when they are ready. The liability insurance contract coverage includes excess insurance for general liability and workers' compensation. It also includes insurance coverage for the airport, law enforcement, employment liability, unmanned aircraft, with drones, and underground storage tanks. Rates are secured through Alliant Insurance Services, a third-party broker who was approved by council in 2015. Factors determining premiums include market conditions, the city's loss run history, leverage, levels of coverage, and the city's self-insured retention.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Prince.
I move that council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Prince, seconded by Councilmember Van, that the council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Corman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't see it on the agenda, but I thought we had a committee on committee reports to present. We met today. I'm not sure if that's ready to go.
I do have it, sir.
Okay, great. I'd like to go ahead and have that read, please.
Okay, committees on committees committee report. The 2021 council committee assignments. The Committee on Committees recommends the following council committee assignments for 2021. Finance Committee, which will meet the second and fourth Mondays at 4 p.m. Valerie O'Halloran, Chair. Ed Prince, Vice Chair. Ryan McIrvin, Member. Public Safety Committee meets the third Monday of each month at 4:30 p.m. Ruth Perez, Chair. Ryan McIrvin, Vice Chair. Ed Prince, Member. Community Services, first Monday, 4:30 p.m. Kim Convan, Chair. Angelina Benedetti, Vice Chair. Ruth Perez, Member. Utilities, it'll meet the first and third Mondays at 3:30 p.m. Angelina Benedetti, Chair. Valerie O'Halloran, Vice Chair. Kim Convan, Member. Planning and Development Committee meets the second and fourth Mondays at 5 p.m. Ed Prince, Chair. Ruth Perez, Vice Chair. Valerie O'Halloran, Member. And finally, the Transportation Committee will meet first and third Mondays at 5 p.m. Ryan McIrvin, Chair. Kim Convan, Vice Chair. Angelina Benedetti, Member.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Corman.
I move that council concur in this committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that the council concur on the committee on committees committee report. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. That is it on that. Okay, we have legislation. We have 13 ordinances for first reading and one for second and final.
Right, and then one more for final after that, too. I think there's 15 altogether. Okay. The first ordinance is regarding the emergency ordinance interim zoning controls for homeless shelters. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, adopting the following interim zoning controls in response to the Renton Red Lion COVID-19 de-intensification shelter operating in the City of Renton since April 2020. 1. Clarifying and modifying principal, accessory, and unclassified use regulations by amending subsections 42050A, 42050C4, 42050C5, and 42050C6 of the Renton Municipal Code. 2. Clarifying and modifying certain land use definitions in the Renton Municipal Code by amending subsection 42060K of the Renton Municipal Code, amending the definition of diversion facility and removing the definition of diversion interim service facility in section 411040 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending the definition of hotel and adding a definition of hotel extended stay in section 411080 of the Renton Municipal Code, and amending the definition of social service organizations in section 411190 of the Renton Municipal Code. 3. Allowing for one COVID-19 de-intensification shelter to temporarily operate in the commercial arterial zone, CA zoning district, by adding a definition of COVID-19 de-intensification shelter in section 411030 of the Renton Municipal Code, and amending subsections 42060G, 42080A71, and 42080A101 of the Renton Municipal Code, and 4, allowing for and regulating land uses serving those experiencing homelessness by adding a new section 44045, homeless services use, to the Renton Municipal Code, and adding a definition of homeless services use to section 411080 of the Renton Municipal Code, making a legislative determination that the ordinance is exempt from full compliance with the State Environmental Policy Act, Chapter 4321C RCW, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date. That was
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember O'Halloran.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Well, I believe it's to be referred to next week for second and final reading. Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes.
Thank you. I move that the ordinance be advanced for second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember O'Halloran, seconded by Councilmember Perez, that the ordinance be moved to second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Ma-
Opposed, nay.
No.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
do we have discussion before voting?
we certainly have discussion. I didn't hear any. Councilmember Van.
I think Councilmember McIrvin said no first, so I'll yield my time to the senior.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to confirm, to the clerk, where are we on the vote? Are we rolling that back or from a process standpoint?
Well, we started the vote and then you guys, the mayor allowed discussion, so go ahead and speak, Mr. McIrvin.
Okay.
We haven't finalized the vote.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying I do want to, and I apologize, I have a lot to say here. So I will try to get it out within a reasonable amount of time, as I know we've already been going for a little while. I do appreciate and value all the input we've received from the community on this issue. And I have been listening to them, and that's why I have some hesitation tonight. I want to find a better path forward, because to me, I'm not sure this is it, and I'm just not prepared to vote yes on this tonight. I understand my colleagues who feel that this is the right path forward, and I think we want to get to the same place. We want to get to a place where this is not a permanent facility. I am just not convinced at this time that this is the right path to do that without significant changes. I do understand the idea of keeping this thing on track, and if that is the goal, and that's why some folks are voting yes in the hopes that it will improve by next week. But I remain a little bit skeptical that 1 week is going to be enough time. And I still remain concerned that as we see case counts rising, even though, 6 months from now things could be better, we don't know that. And I don't feel comfortable with the messages it's sending this time. I'd like to believe that in 6 months we have found a new permanent home and that no one has been evicted, because I don't believe for a second, despite some of the accusations, that one person on this council wants to evict anybody. I really don't. I don't like the way that King County approached the situation. We do have the right to locally to set our local zoning. They didn't put it in Mercer Island or Medina or any predominantly white affluent neighborhood. They put it in Renton, a majority neighborhood. There are severe life safety issues that in this facility that without major renovation make it unsuitable. I have a list of things, but I don't want to go through all of them. I want to give other people the chance to weigh in on where they think. I think we want to get to the same spot. For me right now, I'm not ready to accept this as the path forward, though.
Councilmember Van.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleague, Councilmember McIrvin, I do have hesitation after hearing our community members, new and old, making comments and reading through all the comments through emails, and being a listening ear at two of the forums that I was a part of, and myself being the probably the only council member, and I might be wrong, please correct me, to have visited the de-intensification facility and really understanding the situation. With all that said, I do appreciate the city and the staff and mayor for putting all the efforts into, and our community partners and members looking into their comments and revising last week's ordinance. I think it's impressive. I want to thank the hosts of the two forums, very much educating our community. There is opportunity for us to continue community conversation to help understand more of our community needs and concern, like those 600 unhoused students. Again, thank you to the council member and city staff and community members, new and old, who have come together to speak on this issue. Together with King County and city elected and community members, we need to pause and really think through intentionally of this ordinance. I see the shortcomings of DSC services due to lack of support, lack of leadership from our King County members and King County electeds to provide flexible funding for cities like ourselves to work on during this time, which drain our resources. But altogether, homelessness is a regional issue, although we are taking the brunt of it. Our first responder, our small businesses that I've interviewed, our city residents in the downtown area who are mostly affected, where I'm away from the affected area, right? So I can't take that lightly. But as Rentonites, I know that we are an inclusive city and that we should take this opportunity to rise to the occasion and let us be the bridge builder and have that conversation with the different communities. My main concern and why my hesitation is through the public comments, but also of the COVID-19 pandemic. What it has taught us is, the best and the worst of all of us and our policy. And with the timeline of the vaccine, I'm very much concerned of what that would do to these potentially unhoused folks, but also to our own community of unhoused individuals. So that is my concern.
Okay, Councilmember Prince.
Thank you so much. We've heard a lot of talking tonight, and so I don't want to belabor this much, but I did want to explain. If we'd had this vote 2 weeks ago, I probably would have voted no. But I feel like the ordinance and I feel like the ordinance we have in front of us today is far better than the one we had in front of us 2 weeks ago. I was concerned about some of the separate but equal phraseology in that one that reminded me of Jim Crow. And so I was really, really uncomfortable with that. Is this perfect? No. My heart goes out to the residents of the Red Lion because I feel like they're in the middle of this fight between us and the county. They've done nothing wrong. They didn't ask to come to Renton. They were brought here, and we've got to use services to provide for them. I want to see this get better, and I understand as a member of the Regional Homelessness Authority how this is a regional issue, and I think that's why we really need to get started on sub-regional planning, so we can find out what every community needs in their community, because it's not one size fits all. Do I hope that the ordinance that we get in front of us next week is better than the one we have in front of us this week, and is far better than the one we had in front of us 2 weeks ago? Yes, absolutely, I do. But I also think that we need to, the county and the Homeless Authority and all of us, we need to get started on the sub-regional planning so we can actually find out what communities need instead of assuming we know what communities need. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
Yeah, so I want to thank Mr. Prince for his comments and just say that I feel like we've been sort of presented with a false dilemma here, that it keeps being presented as the choice is either that people need to go live outside or else they need to live in the Red Lion. But that's not the case, and that's not what we're trying to do here. For anybody that wasn't following exactly, the ordinance gives until June 1st for all residents to remain. During that time, we're going to be working with King County. We're going to be working on this ordinance. We've asked that at that point that they reduce the numbers by half, which is something that's been discussed already as a potentially an improvement, that it is kind of a large group of people. But I wanted to also just clear up that, we've heard, well, this is Renton's problem. Renton has to face this problem. And yes, we've definitely been facing homelessness in Renton. In fact, our city's worked very hard with our housing authority, which is 80 years old. Our housing authority owns over 1,000 subsidized units that they make available for free or very low rent to people that need them. But I wanted to point out, we're doing that as a working class city where the average household in Renton makes 80% of the area median income, around $65,000 a year, versus Seattle, which makes 120% of the area median income, $102,000 per year. So our residents are not, on average, as wealthy as Seattle residents. We're 55% people of color in Renton. Seattle's 65% white. Seattle is really aggressively gentrifying. In fact, I just saw numbers tonight. They're planning on another 20,000 units coming up this year. They'll be high-rise condos. From Seattle's history, they'll be selling in the $1 million range. The city of Renton has tried hard to hold on to its existing housing stock. They've tried to keep housing affordable. One of the things that Renton residents have done is they've voted to increase their taxes. So the tax rate, the property tax rate in Renton is 20% higher than Seattle. And with those votes, what our residents have done, and again, these are residents that make 30 to 35% less than people in Seattle, they voted to, one, add money for the housing authority to have more housing, so seniors have housing thanks to a bond issue that they passed. Another one they voted for was to increase their fire protection. So they were concerned about fire safety in our community, and they wanted to add a fire station and add fire marshals and other fire personnel and aid cars. And so they dug deep, and even though it's a population that makes less than the population in Seattle, they did generously make those votes. Now, our two fire marshals, I happen to sit, like two of my colleagues on the council, I sit on a regional fire authority board. Those two fire marshals have done about as many investigations at this property over the period that they've been in the Red Lion as they normally would do over 200 businesses in a year. So basically their main focus is this one facility. And we can't know what they're not finding by not being available right now in a pandemic to be inspecting these other buildings. It was important to the community that they pay for this. People that don't have that much revenue to begin with came forward with it. And then, and as hard as those fire inspectors worked, on the RFA board, we were repeatedly warned that there were fire safety issues of concern. And then, of course, between the last meeting and this, there was a very, very potentially dangerous fire. And, I worked about half of my career. I had a fire protection designation. I was in aerospace, but it's not that different. I mean, the way you protect against fire is number one, you make sure you don't have ignition sources. Secondarily, you have containment in case you have accidental ignition sources. And then thirdly, you put in systems if you can, like sprinkler systems and smoke detection systems. But roughly the way those work out is preventing sparks will keep you safe, all but maybe 1 out of 10,000 or 1 out of 100,000 times. Containment will get you another 10,000 factor on that. So it makes it so that any night one of us goes to bed in our house, there's only maybe a 1 in a million chance that something's going to spark and set off a fire. But then when you put sprinklers and you put smoke detection, you buy yourself, you don't give yourself another 1 in a million chance. Those systems are not entirely reliable. They require a lot of maintenance. So the chance of a smoke detector not working is 1 out of 100. The chance of a fire sprinkler not working is about 2 out of 100. So where I'm going with this is that if we have situations where somebody might intentionally start a fire, your odds of getting harmed dramatically increase. It's the 1 in a million normal protection you have is not there. And then it's just a matter of days before a system doesn't work properly. So we're very fortunate that the sprinklers worked when the individual was barricaded into the Red Lion and had lit the room on fire. That won't always happen. We can't guarantee it. So some of these things actually do need to be addressed. And that's, I want to see us address them. I don't want to just wait until there's a tragedy. So this ordinance gives us the bandwidth to keep people sheltered, to continue to do what this community's done really hard, which is generously work to make sure that everybody has a home, but also do it in a way that, like the Housing Authority has when they built their 1,000 units, that's code compliant and safe. So I'm supportive.
Thank you, Councilmember Corman. Anyone else would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick question.
Yes. Oh, Councilmember Van actually had her hand up.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Councilmember Van.
Actually, Councilmember Benedetti hasn't had a turn yet, so.
Oh, I didn't see your hand up there. Okay, Councilmember Benedetti, then Van, then Councilmember Prince.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I did have my hand raised there for a while. This was a very, very difficult vote for me because I do want an ordinance that will allow for us to have a shelter. And I don't feel that the ordinance that we have in front of us is by any means the perfect instrument to get there. In fact, I'd very much like to see, I think it's too restrictive, and I'd like to see what work we can do in the coming week to try and get it into a better place. I am voting for it now I'm voting to advance it now only in the hope that we are able to get to a better place between now and next week, and that we're able to make more changes to the language, because I still very much understand the community's hesitation around this ordinance. The reason that I am voting to advance it is because I do want to see a shelter in Renton, and I do want to see it safely operated, but I do want to see a shelter in Renton, and I want an ordinance that will allow for that use in our community, because this crisis is not going away. So I'm going to trust that we're going to do that work in the next week. And I want to say that I do think that one of the things that I am truly grateful for in this really difficult crisis that has been precipitated by this pandemic is that there are people who are living in that building now who have had a dramatic improvement to the lives that they were living, and who, by not being in a congregate shelter, have been able to make different choices and to sustain their lives in a more successful way. So that, I think, is one of the grace notes that we've had in this pandemic. And as Councilmember Prince said, this isn't something that anyone asked for. And so I think that we do owe it to the people who are there to try and find a way to move forward in this. And if it's an ordinance, then I think it should be an ordinance that gives us a path forward, so that we can just get out of this continuous loop that we're in with the ESC. And I want us all to be really careful about what it is that we vote on next week. So I am voting to advance the ordinance in hopes that we can get there, and in hopes that we can get to something better than what it is that we're seeing. And I do wish to thank the administration very much for taking the time in the last 2 weeks to really get it into a better place than what it is that we saw 2 weeks ago. I am truly grateful for that. And with that, I will yield.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Van.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not sure if other council member want to speak, but again, my main concern is public health, and of course, I understand the shortcomings of the shelter, DSC, and the lack of support and what we need. Like Councilmember Benedetti, I am very much for having a shelter in our jurisdiction, because we have to look at our 600 unhoused students, but also 50 to 60 plus folks that are just wandering our streets, right? I move to request, so this is where the discussion, I'm not sure if Councilmember Prince want to make his statement, then I can do my amendments. Do you have something to say, Councilmember Prince?
I just had a simple question.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, have we had a chance to put this ordinance through our equity lens?
Yes, to a certain degree, yes, we have. Not a true equity lens, but it was looked at by staff. So, but that's certainly something that can be done before next week.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So, thank you, Councilmember Prince. One of the many questions that I would like to ask, but at this point, I move to request staff to include the following changes to the ordinance by striking the number of no more than 125 residents, but rather 175 individuals by June 1st, 2021, and complete relocation date to be moved to June 2022. Again, for me, it's the timeline of pandemic and vaccination. I know that it's forced, the shelter was forced upon us, but certainly to reciprocate the same energy to King County is just something that I think as a collaborative regional partner in our own community health, as we are all interconnected within this pandemic that we're experiencing.
Councilmember Van, do you mind repeating your motion?
Yes, sir. I move to request staff to include the following changes to the ordinance, striking the number of no more than 125 residents, but rather 175 by June 1st. And then complete relocation date to change to June 2022.
Thank you.
I'll second that for the purpose of discussion.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Vaughn, seconded by Councilmember McGurven. Motion's on the floor to strike the number from 100 to 175 and move the date to June of 2022. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I guess I don't have any strong objection to that, but I did want to point out, if I understood your opening comments and the reading of the ordinance, that we would have had this choice to change these timelines and the number of people in any case.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I'd offer that to my colleagues, is that we don't know what the numbers will be, we don't know what the pandemic will look like, but it's our intention that instead of, currently we're in an environment of litigation with the county, because our code enforcers doing their jobs the way they've been trained to do their jobs have raised issues about being out of compliance. If we pass this ordinance tonight, we will switch from an environment of litigation to a environment of cooperation and start working through what this horizon has to look like and what the replacement facilities are. And so we can try and guess at that tonight by trying to change the numbers, but we probably don't need to either. In fact, I know we don't need to. We could just go with the number that's stated.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
Yeah, so I think this is a conversation certainly we should be having, which is why I seconded the motion. And my understanding of it was to bring back options. And I would agree with Councilmember Corman. I don't know the precise number, and it's probably tough for us to guess at that. I think the intent of the motion was to perhaps provide a little bit more assurance to folks. I do have some sympathy for the number being cut in half, with the understanding for the owner that if they were only allowed a certain number, that the intent would be that they could then use the remainder of the facility of the hotel. I'm not sure it would be viable, as that is my concern, and I think this alleviates some of that. But my thought on this is and if I understood the motion correctly, was to bring it back, not to amend it right now. Is that, if I heard the motion correctly? Because I do think it makes sense to consider this change or other changes over the course of the week, and then perhaps vote them up or down at the next meeting.
Yes, Councilmember McGurven. That's what I was told, at least to any amendments that I want to, as far as what I've heard from community, to bring it on to the dais tonight. And I am asking to refer that particular piece to staff.
Mr. Mayor, I just need clarification.
Yeah.
So we are voting on referring to administration these two possible changes, not on making these changes on the current ordinance. Am I correct? Am I understanding correct?
I think, yeah, well, we're going to clarify right now. So this isn't to change the original ordinance that we're voting on. This is to move these to administration for consideration for changes for next week. Is that what you're proposing? Okay. So this is...
I missed that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I missed what Ms. Van said. She said,
Well, to request, I move to request staff to include the following changes to the ordinance. So we would have to vote on the fact that I'm requesting staff to do something, right? Referring the matter to staff. But not necessarily that it's going to be in the ordinance tonight.
We should change the language. You should say you referring to staff.
Yeah.
I think that's where the issue is. You didn't talk about referring. You talked about changing the ordinance. If you want for staff to look into and bring it back to us next week, refer it. I'd say I'd refer staff. Refer it to staff. Or refer it to administration.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Jane, do you have to add? Because that was the language you told me to put in.
Yes.
I'll speak up here. I mean, I think that we as staff are hoping to have an ordinance that is finalized and ready for adoption by next week, because it's the last meeting that the council has, that we're planning for the council to have in December. If the council has specific requests to change the language of the ordinance, so staff has been working on responding and collecting the public comments and putting their own equity lens on and incorporating changes that staff believes represent what it believes council wants to do in accomplishing an equitable ordinance. But if we're going the wrong direction, this is your opportunity to redirect us and tell us to change substance. And I would say that the change from 125, and just to clarify for the record, the ordinance currently has the one de-intensification shelter that would be allowed. It is allowed with unlimited numbers or without restriction on numbers anyway within the ordinance up until June 1st and then of 2022. And then June 1st, 2022, it currently has that number reducing to 125. What I heard Councilmember Van wants to do is basically direct staff to include in the next ordinance that will be before the council for adoption on the 4th.
Okay, that's different.
125 to 175.
He wants to change it on the floor right now.
She wants us to revise the next version of the ordinance for the council consideration next week. So if her motion passes, my understanding is the intent would be staff would bring that back with a change to 175, and also the current date of January 1st, 2022 would change to June. And she didn't say what specific date, but I would probably put in there June 1st of 2023. And I'm sorry, January 1st. I back up. The other date with respect to the de-intensification shelter is that it must relocate out of the CA zone, the commercial arterial zone, by no later than January 1st, 2023. Councilmember Van is asking for that date to be changed to June of 2023.
22? 22.
Oh, 22, so moving that up. No.
Just a few months after, because it's flu season and all that and the pandemic, right? So that the whole public health thing.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, okay.
January 1st to...
Hopefully I didn't just confuse it more than I helped.
No, Shane, I just want to make sure that I know what I'm voting for. So right now, if I vote yes, I'm voting that those changes will be those things are going to be changed on the ordinance, not to refer it to staff to consider it, but to make the changes.
Right, and it does not bind the council just because we put it in the next ordinance. This is first reading. You're moving to have it go to second reading. Second reading is when you'll adopt it. If it has things in it, the second reading that you don't like, we can always rework it and bring it back again. But if we're going to adopt it next week, we as staff would prefer to have it finalized for that. So if there's specific feedback or changes, again, if there's things that you want the council to direct it to change tonight, I would say make those motions tonight. If you individually have feedback that you want to share with the mayor or at CED as to, for staff to consider, hey, can you think about bringing this back as a staff recommendation for additional changes? you can reach out after the meeting or during the meeting in order for us to consider some changes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Halloran.
So I just, I'm of the impression, and I think Councilmember Corman stated this earlier, that these numbers, these dates and these numbers are not carved in stone. As we move forward into next year and have the experiences of the first 6 months of 2021, if things are different, we can talk about changing numbers and changing dates as we learn more, correct?
Correct.
So it could go up or it could go down. It could come forward or it could be later at that time.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I would like to keep us moving quicker because I don't want us to, in fact, plan for a crisis. So if we have more aggressive targets now, and then we work with the county on trying to meet those targets, and then we decide, okay, we're not quite making it, we're going to have to relax it because it's maybe taking longer to get some other facilities online, we can live with that. But what we don't want to do is push the date out so far that we run out of time and run out the clock and there's nowhere else for people to go. So I guess I can't see why, for all of us that want to make sure that people have housing, why we wouldn't be, pushing the county and the 39 cities working with the county to find other facilities sooner rather than later. And we can always extend this later. So I might offer that an alternative suggestion maybe we can make is to go ahead and approve this motion. And I'd be happy to even second a follow-on motion that says that the timelines would be one of the first issues of dialogue that we would discuss with the county.
Okay, before you make another motion, then we get even more tangled up. Councilmember McGurven.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I understand from what staff said correctly, the idea of bringing like written amendments that we could consider over the next week and introducing them would not be preferable, if that's what I'm hearing. Because to me, that would be better versus making a decision tonight. I think more time is kind of where I'm on. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I seconded for the purpose of discussion. I don't know what the right number is. I do agree that we can change it later. I'm more worried about the signal we're sending if we're being more adversarial than collaborative. And I get it because we've been in this adversarial relationship from the get-go. And it feels like we haven't gotten anywhere. And I guess it's weird to think that perhaps that, someone will change course, but I see a lot more attention brought to this now. I do see hopefully some good intent at moving forward with a more permanent location. And if we can identify something sooner, I would hope that our partners would see that. I just worry that if we set hard lines, we're not working collaboratively. And that's why I'm wary of this, and perhaps offering a little bit more wiggle room could be helpful. Again, I don't know what the number is.
Okay, Councilmember Van.
Yeah, and the extension of time is not because I want to delay the process with King County. That's definitely, right up our priority as leadership work with King County, right, to figure out something. But certainly the pandemic and the vaccine situation. So for me, if it's a number that's not of concern to Councilmember Corman, and I thank you for seconding it and also agreeing to that, for me is I would at least prefer to have it in, and then we can always adjust it, right? If it doesn't, if it's actually the situation gotten worse or if it's gotten better, 6 months down the line.
Councilmember Prince.
Instead of sitting here and trying to figure out arbitrary numbers, can we get something referred to the administration and come back and bring it back next week? And because trying to figure this out right now on the floor is not, I think, the highest and best use of our time, especially when we have 14 more ordinances to go through.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benedetti has her hand raised.
You're up there in the corner, that's why I don't see you, Councilmember Benedetti. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. So, okay, yes, Councilmember Benedetti.
I would agree with Councilmember Prince that we still have a long way to go this evening. I also think that it's important that we understand what our path forward is here now that we are in a place where we have to vote on something. I would just ask Councilmember Van, I'm trying to understand what the intention around those dates. So I'm looking at page 21, section 5 of the ordinance, and it states, after June 1st, 2021, it shall not serve, the shelter shall not serve more than 125 persons. Are those the two numbers that you're referring to, or are you wanting to extend the date entirely from the January 1st, 2022 date of when it shall cease operation if it doesn't have permitting? I'm not quite sure which dates you're targeting here.
Yes, so the number that you just read, 125, I'd like to strike that and have that be rather 175 by individual by June 1st, 2021. So that same date is still, but just the number of residents. And then the complete relocation is, instead of January 1st, 2022, my amendment is for June 1st, 2022. So several months out.
Thank you.
Any more conversation on the amendment?
And Mayor, I just have a question from Jason.
Yes.
So Jason, we have an amendment on the floor that has been seconded. So the vote that we will be taking right now is on that amendment?
Yes, on the amendment. And then we have to go back and vote on the main motion.
Yes. Okay, no other conversation. Oh, Councilmember Gervin.
Sorry, one last thing. I think I would prefer, actually, if we split these and brought them back as separate amendments next week. So at this point, I'm not ready to vote yes on this amendment because I don't know that it makes sense to consider amending the document that's going to come back right now until we've had more time. I'd like to see if that would be something that could be brought back next week. But if I'm hearing that's not an option, then I don't know that it's worth just doing it on the fly as others have suggested. That's my last word on this.
We could do it at the next council meeting, sorry. It would be easier if you were adopting the complete document that we bring back next week. But if there are individual amendments that we can very clearly make motions for, refer to the actual section and subsection of the ordinance in the motion, so you're moving to amend the presented ordinance with da-da-da-da. I would ask that if you want to do that, it would be helpful if you contacted me or someone else on staff ahead of time and we help work through what that motion looks like so we can go through section by section and state that motion, and we can go through motions to amend on the floor. So if the council adopts something with amendments on the floor, it's very clear as to what's being changed.
Yeah, totally agree. That was my intent. I thought if we had some sort of written document prepared by staff that showed what the amendment is and what the effect of the changes are, that would do it for me.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
Okay, so if I can clarify, I think maybe our attorney's proposing that one option would be we could go ahead and effectively adopt this ordinance tonight with an understanding that in preparation for second reading, a variety of different timelines might be considered, and those we would then debate and further finalize at the second reading.
And just to clarify that you're not adopting anything tonight. All you're doing is moving it to second reading.
Moving it to second reading. So we could move it to second reading, and those conversations can happen, and then we can take that element, the timeline up in the second reading.
Yeah.
That seems okay to me.
Okay, but before we move on that one, we need a vote on
the amended motion, amendment to the motion.
Yes. And I'll need help on this one. The amendment is to strike the number 100
and 125.
strike the 125 and change it to 175. And change the date.
From January, oh, sorry, sir, go ahead.
No, you have it written down.
Yeah, January 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2022.
From January 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2022. Okay, I think I'm ready. So we have a motion on the floor to amend the ordinance, strike the number 125 and change it to 175 for the reduction in the shelter, and change the date from January 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2022. All in favor, signify.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to do this one more time. I just want to understand. So this actually amends the timelines in the ordinance as it reads right now. And can I get clarification that is in fact what Councilmember Van was doing?
Yeah, she's amending it right now completely.
Okay. So as I make the decision whether to vote on this, I'm deciding whether to do that or review some a variety of different potential timelines by the time of the second reading.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Are we ready to vote?
Please.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
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 Okay, motion fails. Now we're on to the ordinance.
The main motion, yes, sir.
Motion, we got a second on that, yeah. Okay, so moved and seconded the ordinance be moved to second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay.
No.
Nay.
Okay, 5-2, motion carries.
Okay, sorry, getting back to my notes, sir.
Yeah, I gotta find my place too.
Okay.
Deep.
So the original motion carried. The motion to amend did not carry.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So are we ready for the next ordinance? Okay, ordinance, oh, go ahead, sir.
We're ready for the next ordinance. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, ordinance number 5998 is docket item 176 regarding self-service storage and commercial zones. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending self-storage standards in subsections 42060M, 42080A17, 42080A22, and 42080A59 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Prince, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is regarding standalone solar structures, docket item 178. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, adding regulations for standalone solar energy structures by amending subsection 4260 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending Chapter 44 of the Renton Municipal Code by adding a new Section 44105 solar energy systems, and adding new definitions of solar energy system and solar energy system ground-mounted small scale to Section 411190 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Halloran.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Halloran, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is docket 179, changes in the CD zone, the center downtown. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, updating regulations for the Center Downtown CD zone by amending subsections 4260L, 4280A3, 4280A6, and 42120B, and the definition of dwelling attached in Section 41140 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
All right, the next ordinance is regarding docket 180, vesting regulations. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 4145 of the Renton Municipal Code by renaming the section from vesting to vesting regulations, eliminating shoreline development permits and conditional use permits from the list of applications that vest at complete application, clarifying duration of vesting, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, next ordinance is regarding docket 181, ADUs. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, revising accessory dwelling unit, ADU, regulations by amending subsections 42110C, 42110E, and 42116B2 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is docket 182 regarding SEPA appeal. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsection 4970R of the Renton Municipal Code relating to the State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA, appeals process, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on the second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is regarding docket 183, which is other government uses. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, revising regulations relating to government facilities by amending subsection 4260G of the Renton Municipal Code, amending the definition of government facilities other in section 41170 of the Renton Municipal Code, and adding new definitions of government maintenance facilities other and government office other to section 41170 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Prince, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is regarding the 2020 comp plan. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, adopting the 2020 amendments to the city's 2015 comprehensive plan, maps, and data in conjunction therewith, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is regarding I believe it's a map amendment 19M01 for Lind Avenue rezone. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, changing the zoning classification of one parcel, King County parcel number 192305947, within the City of Renton from industrial medium, IM, to commercial arterial, CA. This is the CPA Comp Plan Amendment 2019 M01, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Gervin.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading in the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
All right, the next is also a map amendment 19M02, zoning and land use. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, changing the zoning classification of 14 parcels within the City of Renton and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading in the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is also a map amendment 19M03, Benson Upland Group rezone. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, changing the zoning classification of 29 parcels bounded by Southeast Petrovitsky Road to the north, 118th Avenue Southeast to the east, Southeast 180th Street to the south, and 116th Avenue Southeast to the west within the City of Renton from residential 4, R4, to residential 6, R6, CPA 2019 M03, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading in the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Okay, the last ordinance for first reading is regarding the 1300 Bronson Way North street vacation. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, vacating a portion of an alley located near 1300 Bronson Way North and situated east of Garden Avenue North, west of Meadow Avenue North, north of Bronson Way North, and south of North 2nd Street. This is considered the 1300 Bronson Way North street vacation, VAC 20001.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I would like to move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay, the next ordinance is for first reading and then advancement to second and final reading tonight. It's regarding the extending and amending interim zoning controls for economic recovery. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, extending and amending the interim zoning controls established by ordinance number 5974 in response to the operational limits on businesses during the COVID-19 declared public health emergency by 1, extending the temporary economic recovery revocable right-of-way permit for businesses, 2, extending the temporary economic recovery signs for businesses, and 3, amending the interim zoning control to waive the requirement to obtain a temporary use permit for the temporary expansion of a business into an adjacent vacant space in a multi-tenant building, authorizing the temporary designation of a limited number of existing public parking stalls within the center downtown zoning district to support parking for short-term curbside pickup or to-go orders from businesses, temporarily waiving parking fees for parking for periods of up to 10 hours within the city's city center parking garage located at 655 South 2nd Street, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Corman.
I move this ordinance be advanced to second and final reading tonight.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be advanced to second and final reading tonight. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
All right, I'm going to read it again. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, extending and amending the interim zoning controls established by ordinance number 5974 in response to the operational limits on businesses during the COVID-19 declared public health emergency by 1, extending the temporary economic recovery revocable right-of-way permit for businesses, 2, extending the temporary economic recovery signs for businesses, and 3, amending the interim zoning control to waive the requirement to obtain a temporary use permit for the temporary expansion of a business into an adjacent vacant space in a multi-tenant building, authorizing the temporary designation of a limited number of existing public parking stalls within the Center Downtown Zoning District to support parking for short-term curbside pickup or to-go orders from businesses, temporarily waiving parking fees for parking for periods of up to 10 hours within the city's city center parking garage located at 655 South 2nd Street, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Corman.
I move adoption of the ordinance as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Corman, second by Councilmember McGurven, that the ordinance be adopted as read. This requires roll call.
Council President Perez.
Aye.
Councilmember Van.
Aye.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Aye.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Aye.
Councilmember Prince.
Aye.
Councilmember Corman.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, the final ordinance, it's regarding the 2020 year-end budget, and it's for second and final reading. First reading was on November 23rd. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending the City of Renton fiscal years 2019-2020 biennial budget as adopted by ordinance number 5898 in the amount of $12,166,453, adopting an amended 2020 City of Renton salary table and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Prince.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Prince, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the ordinance be adopted as read. This requires a roll call.
Council President Perez.
Aye.
Councilmember Van.
Aye.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Aye.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Aye.
Councilmember Prince.
Aye.
Councilmember Corman.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have new business. Council President Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Monday, December 14, 2020, at 6 p.m., the Committee of the Whole will meet via video conference. We have one item on the agenda, is LTAC funding recommendations. And on Monday, December 14, 2020, at 7 o'clock, the City Council will meet via video conference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Van.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Benedetti.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At 5:15 on Monday, December 14th, the Public Safety Committee will be meeting. We have two agenda items, emerging issues in public safety and transition updates.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on Monday, December the 14th at 3:15 p.m., the Utilities Committee will be meeting via video conference. We have three items on the agenda. The first is Monroe Storm Improvement Project, the OTAK contract. Second is Green Stormwater Project, Osborne contract. And third is emerging issues in utilities. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McIrvin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to announce that at 4:30 p.m. on December 14th, the Transportation Committee will meet via video conference with two items on the agenda. One, annual airport lease with BHC, and two, emerging issues in transportation. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Prince.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee will be meeting on Monday, December 14th at 4 p.m. We have 5 items on the agenda. We're meeting via video conference. Bad debt write-off, Cedar River Trail relocation, lobbyist contract, Doug Levy, vouchers, and emerging issues in finance. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Corman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to announce a Planning and Development Committee meeting on December 14th, Monday, at 2:00 p.m., and it's by video conference. 2 items on that agenda. The first is a 2020 year-end wrap-up for planning and development items, and then the second item is emerging issues in CED. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. What is the wish of the council?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
And moved by Councilmember Prince, second by Councilmember Corman, that we adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed to it? All right. Have a good night, everyone.
See ya.
Night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.